Okay, everybody, welcome back to your third and final public policy video here. Our next big area of social policy that we're going to talk about, one that some of you guys are dealing with in your papers, is the environment. A lot of times when we talk environment, um, people have issues, and people talk about, is it economic or environmental policy? There's a big clash there. Most of that clash is because big business needs natural resources that come from the environment, and unfortunately, environmental policy protects those things. The government has established battle zones between big business and the environment with the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1969. The government wants to regulate the environment, which could take away from things that business wants. Government has also created environmental impact statements that get released that allows the public the right to know what something's going to do to the environment, especially something that big business is going to do to the environment as they take natural resources to help out their businesses. A couple other things about the environment. The Environmental Protection Agency has helped protect air with the Clean Air Act of 1970. Since then, car emissions have decreased, and utility emissions, they barter those out. Depending on what you do, you may have higher utility emissions in some places than others. Water, we actually deal with Water Pollution Control Act of 1972, where they actually control what the waters looks like. And that's kind of helped out because since 1972, only a third of the lakes in our country are polluted as compared to two-thirds of the lakes where a lot of us get our water from, our water supplies from, back in 1972. One officer is still a concern what people do, especially when you think about things like at home. If you dump chemicals out into the street, goes into the water runoffs, goes into the main water supply, can be a concern. But the Environmental Protection Agency helps take care of those things. Uh, when you're talking environment, you're also dealing with wilderness preservation. The government gets heavily involved in deforestation, trying to stop it. The government gets heavily involved in oil drilling on public landscapes. Um, you're talking about environment or the government dealing with endangered species, dealing with global warming and carbon emissions. Uh, and this is something that's really big in the news lately. President Clinton, said we're gonna have a 7% cut in our global warming and our greenhouse emissions by 2010. Obviously, we've passed that and we've hit that point. The problem that we had to face with was that who will pay for that? Because anything like that, things like those types of environmental policies cost money. That's why we always say you got to look at the cost benefit analysis. Okay, yeah, this is going to cost a lot of money, but it's going to help our environment, going to help people out. Let's talk about toxins in the air. Also falls into the realm of the environment. Toxic waste are super expensive to clean up and cost lots of money. In the world today, you're not allowed just to dump hazardous waste like you used to. There's a cradle to grave tracking of chemicals. Once a chemical that is harmful to the environment is created, the government tracks that until it's destroyed. Nuclear waste, we actually destroy that and we track all those things. There have been some major cleanups that have occurred dealing with toxic waste. The Love Canal toxic waste dumping in New England. In Times Beach, Missouri, they had diotoxin in the asphalt. The U.S. government actually bought the whole town and cleaned it up. Um, and in Brainerd, they a Creasy landfill that the government cleaned up. And then Yucca Mountain Depository, 90 miles from Las Vegas. Sorry, I hit that too fast. Um, the government also paid to have big cleanups there as well. So you can see the government in cleaning up the environment does lots of things. It does cost money. Like I said, cost benefit analysis. That's what we talked about with this stuff. You always have to look at the cost and what the benefit's going to be. Uh, Another huge area of public policy is foreign policy and defense. Uh, you've seen in the past several years going from World War II to the Cold War, to the Cold War ending. Now we got to fight terrorism. And should our policy be isolationism versus a new global strategy? Um, should we have treaties and military hardware create a lot of baggage when establishing defense policy? A lot of times, hot wars are gone that are long and involve a lot of things to limited action events, such as um, small time things where you go in and you have a target, you take that target out and you leave that area. Um, so it's a little different. Global economics has the United States all over the globe, where there are economic interests, there are military interests, and again, those things when you talk about them all those things cost money, and that's when you're talking foreign policy. We have to defend our country. Uh, A lot of times when you're talking about these things, strategies vary. Is it military, economic, diplomatic? What are we doing in these areas? Do we have economic sanctions to try to box out the bad guys like we do in Iran? Um, One thing we are doing now is we're trying to get rid of nuclear weapons in the world. Um, there are only 15 card-carrying members that possess nuclear weapons in some form. Um, Korea, Iran, Iraq, Libya are all countries that want these things, but we're trying to keep them away from them. We talk about building a shield sometimes for nuclear weapons, and the problem is that in today's world we don't know who the bad guys are. Today's friend sometimes can be tomorrow's enemy, and it can switch back and forth and vice versa. You just never know in today's world. We have difficulty when you're talking foreign policy knowing the difference between outlaw states and just plain terrorists. Um, People that harbor them, are they terrorists? Can we target them? We just don't know a lot of those things. Um, we have coalition building to provide for global security in the world today. A lot of U.S. military missions in the world today are about peacekeeping, not about gathering land, not about going after different things. We have a lot of international cooperation in the world today. Talk about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, supports international economic cooperation with loans to subsidize upstart economies. But it's a different world when you're talking about foreign policy today. U.S. does belong to what's called the GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, and the World Trade Organization to try to eliminate trade barriers, promote equality across global markets. This can be controversial as the United States gets involved with these things because it is trade plus tariffs. We got to look when we're talking about foreign policy, the balance of trade. Um, we never want to import more than we export. We always want to make sure that we're exporting more than we import. You talk about jobs going overseas because labor is cheaper. Outsourcing is a big problem in the United States today. We have policies on foreign companies building plants in the United States. Uh, who we're going to allow in, who are we not going to allow in. Foreign companies also buying U.S. companies. Should that be allowed? Can people do that? Should we give foreign aid to other countries? Is something else, another big policy that when you're talking foreign policy, should we give money to less aids to help promote stability? Um, when you're talking U.S. defense policy, it does rely on two fundamental principles: collective security and deterrence. And that's one of the big things as you're talking policies, guys. These are very important things. Uh, Again, as you're doing this, this is the last video, so make sure you get your notes filled out. And if you have any questions, make sure you let me know.